Jim, I know one thing many of the professors around here would like to talk about in a general sort of way is the Fredonia experience. Now, you mentioned last night in your talk that many, many times over the years, you actually called on many, many skills, not just your English major and whatnot. Give us a feel for the students who are going to be going out in the real world, how it's really important to embrace many, many disciplines, if you could.
Well, it's a unique opportunity in one's life, those 4 years of college, to fully enjoy the smorgasbord of offerings at a university. We tend to specialize in school and then in life, and work and family crowd out time for intellectual discovery. These 4 years are the only opportunity until retirement to really expand your intellectual horizons. And I, of course, had to follow a certain path of a major and 2 minors, but it didn't limit me. At Fredonia, I was an English major. I had a minor in political science, a minor in French, but I took history courses, and I took art history courses and science courses, and anything I could do to expand my knowledge. And so I would recommend that to students not to be limited. On the contrary, this is your one shot at a broad intellectual journey.
And one of the things I know from being a journalism teacher is always moaning and groaning about writing. But you mentioned last night in passing that writing is not just important in your field, but writing becomes very important in many parts of your professional life, correct?
Absolutely, and it's a skill that is increasingly rare. So if you have it or you work on it and develop it, I think it's highly marketable. Just because with electronic media and computers taking over everything, people write less. They're trained less in writing. So if you have that skill, it's immensely important, because we still need to communicate. We still need to formulate our thoughts and articulate our ideas. That's a writing skill. That's a skill. It's a communication skill. And in my case, in my career as a diplomat, words are our weapons. You know, we work with our soldiers, American soldiers, diplomats and military together to advance American interests. But our tool is the written word and the spoken word. So I've used my writing skills and communication skills at every step of my career.
Now, we've talked about writing, and you obviously have hired many young people over the years, and you've seen them in many different settings from many different countries. What else do you think students should embrace as far as training they need to get, or skills they really need to be giving some thought to, other than writing?
Well, I think it depends to some degree on what they want to do with their life. If they already, as an undergraduate, have a clear sense of what their specialty and career is going to be, well, they're going to focus on that for sure. But in my case, when I arrived at Fredonia, I did not know what I wanted to study. I had no idea what career I was made for or would enjoy and be good at. So I, as I mentioned a minute ago, I dabbled in a little bit of everything, got really the core elements of what we call a liberal education, which is a broad humanistic approach. And that was extremely beneficial to me, but I think it would be beneficial to anyone, even if you know already that you're going into business, you know already you're going to go to law school. Having an understanding of history, having an understanding of world politics, having understanding of culture enriches your life, and I think makes you a more complete professional in whatever field that you're going to be in, and certainly makes for a richer human experience.
Let's talk about the lessons learned from your experiences in foreign service. You know, one of the things you mentioned last night, you were involved in many different types of cultures. And I know you made the point that you have to appreciate the cultural sensibilities. So in that respect, American values are not necessarily their values, which is why compromise becomes so important in trying to deal with many different situations and hopefully come away feeling like you're a winner in some situation.
Well, you know, in foreign policy there are values and there are interests. They're not always the same. I believe the United States has always stood for our values, for our democratic values, and for human rights and the rule of law. And these are aspirational goals that we don't always meet ourselves, as we know through our history. But they define who we are. And we can't help but embody them or seek to embody them and promote our democratic ideals in the world. or we're not being true to ourselves, in my opinion. But at the same time, though, the international arena is a competitive arena, and we have national interests, our economy, our security, our well-being, our prosperity, our borders, all of that. We have to promote those interests, and other countries promote theirs. And there's potential clash. There's constant clash. And the job of a diplomat is to try to find ways to work together to reconcile clashing interests so that we don't go to war.
And it seems that understanding cultural differences, cultural sensibilities is an important part of this process.
Absolutely. If you want to negotiate successfully with someone, you have to be able to put yourself in their shoes and to understand where they're coming from, understand their history, understand their motivation, understand their weaknesses and their strengths, and be able to understand and figure out what you need to emphasize and where you can possibly find areas of agreement and compromise. So knowing your enemy or knowing your adversary, knowing your counterpart is critical. You're negotiating blind if you don't have that.
Now, throughout the years, you had many, many experiences with the media, as you mentioned last night. And one of the points you made that, our president, of course, has the rallying cry of fake news all the time. And you yourself said that you were on the firing line many times, but at the same time, because of your experiences, you came to appreciate the importance of a free press and the bigger picture of everything.
I did, indeed. A free press is a pain in the neck if you're on the receiving end. And in our democracy, it comes with the territory. And if you don't like it, as Harry Truman said, you need to get out. And it's true. We do have a president who doesn't like criticism. And understandably, nobody likes criticism. And I think all presidents before him have had negative feelings about the press. But we can't do without it. And as a spokesman, I dealt with frustrating aspects of the media, focus on sensation and the negative. And I really found it painful often and uncomfortable always, but it's our system. We cannot have a functioning government, and we can't have a democracy unless we have a free press. I would make one final point also in regard to President Trump, as you said, condemning the so-called mainstream media and fake news and all of that. Most of the newspaper reporting that he doesn't like, and that previous presidents have not liked, it's not him alone again, is coming from his own people. The leaks, the stories are all coming out of the White House or coming out of the Congress. And so what is blamed or put on the press is in reality the sourcing of these stories is coming from within. That's simply how it works. And as a State Department spokesman, I went around trying to plug leaks, to use the term from Watergate, and you never succeed. And we live in an open society and a democracy, and people will talk to the media, and your own people are the ones doing most of the talking. And so you end up with a circular firing squad if you try to go after the leakers.
Finally, in all of your many years in the service in many different types of countries, is there any lessons you've learned in a general sort of way that would translate either a message for our government or even for our students, for that matter?
Well, I think the lesson is a profound one. We're about to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. And that was, in modern times, maybe the greatest slaughter in history, and over nothing, over minor issues in Europe among countries that were cooperating very well and trading with each other and following a long era of peace and prosperity, and they went to war and massacred each other. And that can happen. There's so much at stake, and in this world today, which is a smaller world because of globalization, and yet in which the weapons of war are much more formidable than they were 100 years ago, and they're in the hands of so many countries. Mistakes, blunders, missteps, misreadings can have dramatic consequences. So that
There are lessons to be learned from history.
for sure,
Remarkable to say.
it doesn't go away.
Okay, one last thing. Anything you want to share that you haven't had the opportunity to share in either your speeches or any of your classroom experiences the last few days?
Well, I love Fredonia. Those were the 4 happiest years of my life, and I wanted them to last longer at the time, so any chance I have to come back, I jump at. So I'm jealous of the students here today and the faculty, and proud of the great work they're all doing.
Anything you especially remember during your Fredonia years?
Well, I remember my professors mostly. Many of my professors have sadly passed away. I graduated from Fredonia, it will be 40 years ago in next year.
So you're a contemporary Professor Igoe, is that what you're saying?
We must be contemporaries, yes. But so there were some who have gone, including Professor Calvin Smith, Professor Robert Schweik from the English department, who were real inspirations to me. But I'm still very good friends with Jim Herkin from political science, who had a really profound impact on my intellectual development, and has always been a friend and a mentor for decades and counting. And Professor Mac Nelson from the English department, who's a force bigger than life, and was then and remains so today. So I'm undoubtedly forgetting and leaving aside many other wonderful professors that